My name is Michael Terry Davis, and I live in Vancouver. I was born in Vancouver, and I've been on the coast since the early 80s, on the water since the early 80s. Yet. So this would have been when I was working for Nimrod Marine. And it was an old fish boat. It was called the Bricco 16, and it had been built by a Japanese guy. And then before he ever put it in the water, it was seized when they interned all the Japanese. And then BC Tel took it and turned it into a cable tender. You know, when they had all these telephone cables all over the place, and they'd have this whole little fleet of boats, all called the Bricco something, and she was the Bricco 16. And she used to go out and, I don't know, check cables and stuff. So when I got her, she had a little cabin. She was frighteningly ugly. But she was quite sturdy and fairly inexpensive. And I took her in the early 80s, before GPS and all this sort of stuff. I got her all the way to the top end of Vancouver Island and through the Yucatah Rapids and up into the jungles, and never ran into any gay people, or I had I had lots of gay friends that would come out on the boat with us, but it was all pretty pretty quiet. And then I sold her. I swore I'd never get another boat. Because I actually had two friends out on her, and we'd gone through this really tricky little pass between what was called Cooper Island. It's now Peneluket, but Cooper Island and Thetis Island, there's a very narrow little boat pass there. And I got her through there, and I was all proud of myself, and I was off doing other things, and my buddies were driving the boat, and they slammed her up over a reef down the other side. And after that, she always leaked. And so one day she was sitting at Mosquito Creek on the North Van, and she sank at the dock. And I had no money. I mean, I was like 19 years old, and I'd been, I was in debt up to here when I got it. And after that, it just got worse. And this guy called me up and he said, "I'll buy it as is for $1." And I was like, sold. Buddy, a gay friend of mine, an older man, we were just monkeying around, wandering around up in Port Moody, and saw this really cute little 26-foot tiny little thing. 26-footed, it used to be a school boat for the Gulf Islands. And somebody had converted it into a little cruiser. It had a 1949 Chrysler Crown gas engine in it. And I loved it. I thought it was absolutely adorable. And it had just failed a survey. Somebody had made an offer on it and then got it surveyed. And you could literally push your thumb through the back of the wheelhouse. It was so rotten. And so I bought it for like $8,000. It was cheap. And I was going to cruise it for a year and then burn it, but I loved the boat so much. And so I decided to rebuild it. Coast. And also ended up meeting quite a few gay guys. In 1993, I had pulled into the Maritime Museum harbor. They have a little heritage harbor at the entrance to False Creek. And there was this very good looking guy on this really old boat, like really old. And I pulled up alongside, and we started chitter chattering, and he was really friendly. So I pulled alongside, and the boat was called the Rheingold, and it was built in 1911. And it was absolutely immaculate. It was like a little jewel box. And his name was Brent, and I thought he was absolutely adorable. And then this other guy showed up. And I was kind of like, who's he? And that was his partner. They'd been together for 14 years. And he ended up becoming a very good friend, and I ended up actually working for him. And it turned out that he had worked for the Coast Guard as well. So he was one of the very few commercial maritime guys that I knew that was gay. And we became lifelong friends. So I sold her and started looking out for a fish boat. Couldn't find one. And my mom and her husband were out wandering around Victoria, actually, Saanich, I think. And they found this beautiful boat that had a brand new diesel engine in it. And so bought that and called her the Sylvia Rose, because my mother's name is Sylvia and I'm a mama's boy. So she was called the Sylvia Rose. And took her all over the place. Took her around Vancouver Island, took her out onto the west coast of the Charlottes, explored the mid-coast, and it was like, what do I do with this fish boat that can go anywhere? But I don't have the time anymore, so I sold her. Swore I'd never have another boat, certainly not a wood one. And then, In 2010, everybody else was all excited about the Olympics, and I was wandering around Victoria and found this beautiful, beautiful little sailboat called the Nightwind, and she had been designed and built by a quite renowned Pacific Coast designer named Frank Fredette. She was a piece of business, you know. I'd I'd handled like I can do a tug and two barges behind and land both of them, and you know, like I can handle boats. And she made me look like a rank amateur. He would like, you'd be coming to the dock, and the wind would go, and she had all these huge sails way up on a bowsprit, and she'd just pivot and go up and she'd crush the dinghy against the dock. She was just unbelievable, but she was very pretty. And